Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our virtual event, It's Not Easy Being Green, Recycling Made Simple. My name is Betsy Wiest, and I am the Social Justice Coordinator for the Sisters of St. Joseph. I've had a lot of questions lately about recycling, and as I spoke with other people, I found out that they had the same questions that I did. So I reached out to several experts in the field, and we began planning this event a long time ago so that we could all have our recycling questions answered. So tonight, we have a panel of experts with us who are going to address those pressing questions that we all have about recycling. And I know these keep us up at night. Things such as, how did recycling start in the first place? Why should I recycle and does it really help? What's recyclable and what isn't? Do I have to separate my items? The big question, how come my friend who lives in MILLCREEK can recycle glass, but I who live in Erie cannot? What happens to my recycled items? How about, hey, that truck that took my recycled items looks a whole lot like that truck that just took my garbage. What's the deal? And finally, doesn't everything just end up in the landfill anyways? You'll have answers to all those questions by the time we're done. So here's how our presentation is going to work. As you entered our presentation tonight, you'll notice that you were muted. And we're going to ask that you please remain muted throughout the entire evening. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. My co-host, Deb Seng, and Agrege with the Sisters of St. Joseph, will be monitoring the chat box. And at the end of our program, we've got some time that we'll be able to address those questions. Each presenter is going to talk about a different aspect of recycling. So the question that you put in the chat box may just be answered through the course of our presentation. Because this information is so important, we're recording the presentation and it will be available on the Sisters of St. Joseph website in a few days. That website address is www.ssjerie.org. We wanted to find a way to have you actively engaged tonight and see what you know about recycling. So before each presenter, I'm going to give you a little trivia question. And if you know the answer, please put it in the chat box. Deb, of course, is monitoring the chat box, and she'll know when the first correct answer comes out, and she'll put in the chat box, we have a winner. If you are the first correct answer, would you please privately message Deb and let her know your name and your email address, because we have prizes and we want to make sure that we can get them to you. Our presenters this evening are experts in their field, and they are excited and they are passionate about recycling, and they have been looking forward to speaking with you about recycling and helping you understand just how easy it can be. This evening, our distinguished panel includes Lynn Armel, who is the Sustainability Coordinator for the County of Erie, Sarah Peelman, who is the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Erie, Jessica Stutzman, who is the Recycling Coordinator for MILLCREEK Township, and Terry Fisher, who is the Public Sector Representative with Waste Management. So, without any further ado, let's get started on that first trivia question. What year did recycling start in Pennsylvania? I'll repeat that for you. What year did recycling start in Pennsylvania? Remember, if you know the answer, put it in the chat box. Deb will let you know if you've won. Our first presenter this evening is Jessica Stutzman. Jessica is the Recycling Coordinator for MILLCREEK Township, and she's going to take us on a little trip through history about waste management and the development of recycling in our country. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Betsy. And just to double check here, I just want to make sure I don't run over on time. Will you let me know when there's a minute left?
I will. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up this sign and you'll know.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I give this talk to middle school students, and I find it really helpful for people to understand when recycling started, because to me, it's really, really interesting, and it's also very eye-opening to, not obviously repeat any mistakes we've made in the past. And I think it gives us a background as to why we're doing this. So I'm gonna try and share my screen with you right now. And let's see here. I apologize, I am also new to Zoom. There we go. Okay, is everybody seeing my screen?
We are.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, so the history of trash and recycling. This is a funny photo of some early man, maybe some Neanderthals, but of course, you know, many years ago, we did not produce any trash or any recycling at all. Again, this is just, I think, a really interesting tidbit of information, but you know, as early humans lived and were nomadic, they typically you know, produced waste, but it was all organic material, and they dropped the unwanted items and abandoned them, and wherever it fell, it decomposed naturally. And waste just didn't accumulate at this time because everything was compostable or made from the earth. And so it broke down quickly. And so there really wasn't a need to start worrying about how to get rid of the things that we're producing. So then moving on to hunter-gatherers, they began settling around watering holes in streams. And that makes sense because water is your resource that you need to live. So we start settling around some of these watering holes in streams, and they know they don't want the waste near them. So they start disposing of them in open dumps. But also you can, I guess, think of this as maybe the first start of any streamside pollution. Now it was organic in nature, but just like today, we really don't want to see the trash. So they would also just throw it in the stream and let it be carried off. So again, we're really not accumulating too much at this point. But then we move to the Middle Ages, and I'm sure you guys can, you know what this is, but it's fun to tell my middle schoolers that in medieval times, populations grew rapidly. People started settling into cities, and there were maybe, you know, multiple stories, maybe 2, 3, or 4 stories, and household trash was tossed out the window onto the street. And this, of course, did include bodily waste. And as you can imagine, not only the stench was unbearable, but diseases were easily spread by animals, wild dogs, pigs, and rodents. And some of the plagues were spread just by the animals simply running through the street, or as you can imagine, you know, the family dog picking the trash and running away with it. And, you know, it's kind of a timely message, but being in the middle of a pandemic, we need to be very careful about how we, you know, dispose of our waste. But again, I wouldn't say, you know, recycling was happening at this point because, you know, I think most items that we produced were organic in nature, and we really needed to start recycling when, you know, when we started producing too much trash, or when those items were not organic in nature. So New World settlers began burying their waste in pits in the late 1700s. And as you can imagine, if there is any contamination or disease and you have rainfall, the rainfall will, you know, run through these open pits or these buried pits and have what they call leachate leach into the groundwater system. So just an interesting fact, a method called reduction was when organic materials, dead animals, were boiled until their size was reduced. At that time, they would be discarded, or sometimes they would be used as soap or fertilizers. I love these pictures here. I have a really great fact about Ben Franklin. In 1757, Ben Franklin implemented the first ever street cleaning service to improve sanitation. He saw what was happening again in previous years with disease and whatnot being spread through the streets. So he started hiring people to broom sweep and mop the streets and sidewalks and whatnot. And then, you know, we have another street cleaning system being pulled by horse and cart. So at this time, everybody started to realize that we're accumulating too much waste and we need to dispose of it properly. We need to keep our streets clean, and then that's going to keep our people healthy. Okay, and then moving on to the 20th century, by 1910, 80% of cities had a running waste disposal program. I did read a fact that residents would take their waste to the town dump as a fun family activity on the weekend. They might, take a lunch up, throw their trash out, and then head home again. I love this. I think this is so interesting that there was even a board game created by Milton Bradley at one point called The Town Dump. And so this obviously was fun for some people. And of course, we have a pile of open garbage here. But again, in the early days, we're very, very lucky to have the front loaders or the rear load trucks that go by and collect our trash every week. But, back in the 1900s, late 1800s, this all had to be done by horse and cart. Okay, so moving on to World War II, you can see this advertisement here, and Won It for Victory, waste paper, old rags, scrap metals, old rubber. Clothing was starting to be either repaired or turned into quilts and rags. During the 1940s, families recycled everything and anything, nylons, tin cans, cooking, fats, all for the war effort. And landfills were starting to become full by the 1970s. And so the landfills and the trash haulers needed to start promoting curbside recycling. So that's really when it took off in some of the really progressive or really densely populated cities in America. And currently, I've got some cute young volunteers here from a coworker of mine and also one of my litter cleanups. Pennsylvania Act 101 of 1988. It provided for municipal waste processing and disposal planning, submission of plans, authorizing grants, municipal recycling programs were established, and then the recycling fund was established. And I know we are very, very grateful for this fund. It not only funds some of the Mill Creek Township recycling program for doing a good job recycling. We get grant funding back for doing a good job for all of the tons that are sent to our recycling MRF, and we can cover what a MRF is. I can have Sarah talk about it a little bit as well, but the city of Erie, Mill Creek Township, all the municipalities that fall in a certain grouping, we are required to recycle. And again, we're giving grant funding back to continue our programs, to continue to educate and, just again, let adults, children know what we can do to be better stewards for the earth. So in 1990, the City of Erie Recycling Program started. And then in 1993, Mill Creek Township's first recycling coordinator was hired. And I love this. I was just talking about my daughter before the program started here, but not only does she love robots, I think there's a robot here in her bedroom here next to me, but Wall-E is her new favorite robot. And I use this movie to educate her, and I know they use it in the middle schools to educate students that we do generate a lot of trash and you have to think about where it goes. And so I think it's just, if you haven't seen it, it's a cute children's movie, but it's just really eye-opening as to how much waste we produce. We need to think about recycling. We need to think about reusing or just refusing the item altogether. I love shopping just as much as the next person does, but if you know the item you're buying is probably just going to make it to the trash, by the time you get home, maybe we should refuse the item to start with. And then I've included two definitions here. I'll only read one of them. One is from Los Angeles, one is from Hawaii. There's no standard definition for zero waste. Everybody has adopted their own definition, but there is no such thing as waste in nature. In nature, the byproduct of one system is the feedstock for another system. Only humans have created a thing like this, waste. Ancient Hawaiian culture lived this way before the term zero waste came to be. And we can live this way again through small shifts in our daily activities. And so I think we really need to come, full circle as far as what's being manufactured, how we use it responsibly, and then how do we dispose of it? Is it something that can be broken down and reused again or recycled? Or maybe the item shouldn't be made, to begin with, if it doesn't end use, or if we can't complete or close the loop on a particular item. So that's the definition of zero waste there. And I've just included my contact information if you have any questions, but my main message always, obviously recycling is fantastic, but you do need to think before you purchase and before you throw. So I'm seeing my internet connection. Yes, my internet connection's going. So I'm gonna stop sharing. And there we go.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was wonderful. I mean, whoever thought of the history of recycling, but how interesting that was. So thank you very, very much. As promised, the winner of our first trivia question was Karen Tobin, and the answer is 1988 was the year recycling first started in Pennsylvania. So here's our next trivia question, and this is a yes or no. Are cartons recyclable? And I'm talking about milk cartons, juice cartons, that kind of thing. Are cartons recyclable? Our next presenter is Lynn Armel, and she is the Sustainability Coordinator for Erie County. Lynn's going to talk about the overarching importance of recycling in the grand scheme of sustainability efforts. So Lynn, you're on.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Great. So what's the deal with recycling? So being the Recycling and Sustainability Coordinator, those two things do intersect. So according to the EPA, sustainability means to create and maintain conditions under which humans and nature can exist in productive harmony that permit fulfilling the social, economic, and other requirements of present and future generations. So many of the products and packaging that we use are made from finite or limited resources. By recycling, we reduce our need to extract more resources to make new products. This is more sustainable because it helps preserve our natural resources. Recycling also uses less energy than new production in most cases. For example, one new aluminum can uses the same amount of energy as 20 recycled aluminum cans. So recycling can't continue to be out of sight, out of mind. It is based on recycling markets, not just on the environment. And just because something is made from potentially recyclable material does not make it recyclable in your area. For example, not all plastics are acceptable recycling, and paper coffee cups are not recyclable. So, recoverable versus recyclable. So when we say recyclable, we mean it's reusable or able to be made into another product, versus recoverable, which is dependent on a lot of factors. So it needs to have the right amount of volume to be worth it to pick up and sort and sell to be made into a new product. The sorting facility and the hauler also have to be able to collect and sort it. And then there has to be a purchaser or a demand for the recycled material by a purchaser. So two of the largest areas that have been impacted recently are the sorting and processing in markets. So there have been issues with overall quality over quantity in our recycling markets, and also in recent years, loss of recycling markets because our quality in the United States of our recyclables hasn't been as good. So contamination is when things that cannot be recycled are put in the recycling bin, or they're not free of food contamination. So this can result in the entire bin being labeled as trash and sent to the landfill. So if you see a trash truck picking up recyclables, most likely that was labeled as contaminated. So if it isn't caught before it gets to the material recovery facility, which we'll talk about later, that's where things are sorted, it can cause equipment to jam or reduce the quality of the bales that are sold. So we always say, when in doubt, throw it out. So here is an example of a recycling bin, and I don't see one thing in there that is actually recyclable. So I just want to go through a couple common types of recycling contamination. One is plastic bags and film. They can jam sorting equipment and slow down the process of sorting. So it's really difficult to remove plastic film from the sorting machines. They basically have to shut them down, unclog it, and it's dangerous. So we say no plastic bags and film. Unless you're in the city of Erie, where the things are collected in bags, but you wouldn't put bags inside of your recycling bag. The bag that it's in is the only one that would be okay, and that's just in the city of Erie. But you can recycle film and plastic grocery bags at many grocery stores, or dispose of in the trash or reuse. Another common problem are the plastic clamshell containers, yogurt containers, and basically any plastics that are not a bottle, jug, or jar. There's not a current market for this material, and it causes contamination, and it can cause a processor to reject an entire load. So make sure you're putting those in the trash. Food residue. Food residue can also cause a processor to reject the material. So it causes contamination in the other materials. So you always want to rinse and clean out food residue before recycling. Styrofoam. The processors don't want it. It breaks into small pieces and contaminates other recycling. So you dispose of that with the trash. Napkins and towels, these are also considered contamination. A lot of times there's food and liquid on them that contaminates them, and they're just not recyclable. The cardboard rolls of napkins or paper towels are recyclable, but the napkins and paper towels themselves are not. You can also, a lot of them you can compost in your backyard compost if you have it, or you can dispose of it as trash. Glass, in many municipalities, other than MILLCREEK, you can no longer put glass in your recycling bin because it can cause contamination in some sorting facilities when collected with other recyclables. It can, however, be taken to glass drop-off locations in Erie County. So to simplify it, your recycling does vary by the municipality that you live in. They're all a little bit different. So whenever you get something in the mail or information from your municipality on recycling, that's what you want to follow. But these 9 items, I call them the 9 to know, are recyclable everywhere in every program in Erie County. So it's better to recycle less and recycle right than to be a wishful recycler or hope something is recyclable and put it in the bin. You should really only put it there if you know that it belongs there. So the 9 to know would be newspaper, full-size office paper, cardboard, paperboard boxes, plastic jugs, plastic bottles, plastic jars, aluminum drink cans, and metal food cans. So now I think it's really helpful if people understand what happens to your recyclables and how they're sorted, so you understand the whole process. So I have a video here that I'm going to play on a material recovery facility. And this is the place where your recyclables would go and be sorted and sent. Sorry, I'm having a hard time trying to click on the video link. Oops.
Lynn, we can't hear the video.
Oops. Okay, let me see. Let me stop the share and then reshare. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up it on YouTube because it's giving me issues playing within the PowerPoint.
We can always skip it for now and come back to it at the end if you want to just finish your PowerPoint.
Sure, I can actually, I've got it right here. I can now do the share. Okay. So
We still have no sound on the video.
okay, I can explain it. So this is the sorting facility. So first, things go through a hand sort by people on a line. And there's grates that smaller materials, so glass and smaller pieces of plastic and metal fall through. There's air puffs and grates that things can fall through to get like the different materials sorted. And there's also hand sorting. There's magnets to remove certain metals as well. And then at the end, they end up in bales like this one of the different commodities. And then they can be sold and shipped to processors to make into new materials. So there's just some pictures of the different bales. But that gives you an idea of what an intensive process sorting these things out can be.
Lynn, thank you. That was amazing just to see that, because we normally don't. That's a portion of it that we just don't ever get to see. So thank you so much for sharing. And I know you're going to be coming back to us later, and I'm sure you're going to be sharing more information.
Thank you.
So thank you. Our question before Lynn's presentation was, are cartons recyclable? The answer is no, they are not. And the winner is Nancy Donnelly. So our next question, in theory, how many different numbers of plastic are recyclable, even though they can't all be recycled in our area? In theory, how many different numbers of plastic are recyclable, even though they can't all be recycled in our area? Our next presentation is a joint effort by Jessica Stutzman, who's going to be joined by Sarah Peelman, who is the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Erie. They're going to talk about the specifics of recycling in Erie versus Mill Creek. Go ahead, ladies, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to pull up our presentation again here. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Okay. There we go. Sarah and I worked really hard on this together, and Sarah and I love collaborating because while our programs do differ from each other, really we all have the same end goal. And there are a lot of times we bounce ideas off of each other or questions off of each other. And I think Sarah is definitely the guru. You've been doing it so long. I do look up to Sarah so much. But there are definitely some times where I get a good question from a resident and I'm stumped. And so it's nice to be able to do things like this together so we can kind of collaborate. And we will get into it, but we do take our recycling to different facilities. So I want to start off with best practices for recycling. And we did this as a compare and contrast. So you can see the City of Erie is in green and Mill Creek Township is in blue. So if there's anything we confuse you on, let us know and we're happy to explain it a little bit further. But Sarah, I'll have you take it away here.
Yeah, both of us have folks set out the recyclables ahead of time before their either recycling night or their recycling day. And recyclables cannot be placed out curbside more than 24 hours before your scheduled day or night or 24 hours after. And in the City of Erie, we still are using clear plastic bags or any blue bin or toter, but we can no longer use blue plastic bags. But in Mill Creek, you all have a 25-gallon recycle bin or 65-gallon recycle toters, and you cannot use bags at all.
And we used to use the 25-gallon bin. We had a blue 65-gallon toter. When we started our contract with Advanced Disposal, they were able to provide us with toters within our contract. And so we use 65-gallon recycle toter or a 95-gallon trash toter. But we, because we have the toters and we have the bins, we don't want to clog up the recycling with bags. And so we do say now, no clear bags or no bags to contain your recycling. And that's fairly new for Mill Creek Township. We used to let folks set it out in bags, but since we've provided the bins, at this point, we do say no bags for recycling.
Right, and that's why the city still allows bags, because we do not provide containers. The residents have to buy their own bags or their own bins.
Next, we have here just the very, subtle differences between the City of Erie and Mill Creek Township. And again, as I explained earlier, we do have two different haulers at this time for recycling for recycling, and they take it to 2 different material recovery facilities. And just depending on where your material recovery facility is, sometimes they have end use markets closer to Buffalo or closer to Cleveland or closer to Pittsburgh. So sometimes that's why our program differs, is because our recyclables are taken 2 hours north or 2 hours south. So that's just a really brief explanation as to why the city recycles some things and Mill Creek may recycle others. But with things changing quickly within the waste and recycling industry, I can see us at some point probably all ending up with the same list. So Sarah, do you want to go over your 9 to know one more time, or just touch on anything that I missed there?
It's the same as what Lynn mentioned earlier in her presentation. And I believe Mill Creek accepts all of these same things, and you just accept 2 additional materials. Isn't that correct?
Yep, that's correct here. And I'm going to focus in here. I know the words are a little tough to read, but Sarah and I wanted to kind of blow this flyer up for you. But again, this is everything that Lynn just went over. And then in Mill Creek Township, we take our materials to Buffalo, New York, and that's through advanced disposal. Sarah sends her recycling to waste management, and that heads down to Neville Island. And luckily, we have somebody here from waste management to help us speak on this. But the 2 extra items that Sarah's talking about, at this time, we recycle in Mill Creek glass bottles, jars, and jugs and containers. And also at this time, different than Sarah, we recycle plastic containers. So normally, the main thing to focus on for plastics would be plastics. We tell you not to look at the numbers, but basically plastics 1 or 2, or items that come to a neck, a bottleneck that you can screw on. But Mill Creek does accept what we call the snap-on lid for containers at this time. And as we've mentioned, recycling is always evolving. It's always changing. Markets can sometimes be really high one day, really low one day. And so if there's just a continued downward trend of an item where it's no longer a viable item and we're not able to recycle it, Mill Creek will take it off of our list, and we'll update our website and our flyers and our calendar, and we'll update our residents. But at this time, we accept all of the same things. And Mill Creek also accepts glass and snap-on lid containers as well. Okay, Sarah, what about glass?
Well, in the city, glass is not able to be recycled at this time. So it is not part of our curbside collection, but there is a drop-off facility, a private company, Bayfront Glass, that does accept glass 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but residents would have to drive there and take it there themselves. And that is a private business. It's not part of the city's official recycling program.
With Mill Creek Township and Advanced Disposal collecting our recycling and taking it to Buffalo, New York, New York is the state that mandates glass recycling. And so with us taking it there, we are still able to recycle glass, just I think a little bit longer than everybody else. And glass there is crushed and reused as road aggregate. It's not in the truest sense of the definition true recycling. It's reusing, but I am happy that we are still able to get one more life out of the glass there. And I wanted to also show you guys here the information for Bayfront Glass. Sarah, do you have any thing you want to touch on with this particular slide?
No, it's just nice. They have 2 different locations within the city, one at their business on East Avenue and one at the Whole Foods Co-op. There's a drop-off box there. And then they also have a drop-off site out in the county in Edinburgh. So Bayfront Glass is really working to try to provide glass recycling for folks, even though most municipalities don't offer it anymore as their curbside service. Mill Creek's lucky they can still collect it and at least get it reused once before it would end up, just going into the landfill. So that's a nice alternative in Mill Creek.
And folks, I really want to stress here, following their rules. when we don't follow the rules, unfortunately, recycling sites have to shut down because of contamination. So, and sometimes things change quickly and overnight. And so if you feel confused or frustrated, I think are right there with you sometimes. And just always check before you make a drop off that everybody's most current rules for dropping off recycling. And Sarah and I also wanted to touch on organics and leaves just quickly here because to us, this is still recycling and in its most organic, natural sense. And so, Sarah, if you want to touch, and it's actually very pertinent right now because there are lots and lots of leaves outside. So Sarah, what are your rules for recycling organics and leaves?
Well, in the city of Erie, we're lucky. We provide compost collection of yard and lawn waste from the middle of March until early December. And that includes grass, garden and hedge clippings, small branches, and leaves. So we do collect that 9 months out of the year. The yard and lawn waste, the whole season, can be placed in open hard containers or compostable brown lawn and leaf bags. And additionally, during the leaf season from October to December, you can also use pale green compostable bags for your leaves, but you can use open heart containers all 9 months. And then we do have 4 weeks of curbside Christmas tree collection, the last week of December and 3 weeks in January. And again, it's always recommended to have your containers and bags placed separate from your trash and separate from your recycling containers. But the city of Erie is not able to provide any drop-off service. We come to you.
I like that, Sarah. In MILLCREEK Township, customers of advanced disposal, and this is written into our contract. So we've made sure, that any hauler that collects from MILLCREEK Township is going to do this for us. But we have 5 scheduled weeks of leaf collection. We do not allow grass in our leaf bags. We consider grass trash in MILLCREEK Township, so make sure you keep that separate. One curbside collection is in September for branches. Those need to be cut into 4-foot sections and bundled. One curbside Christmas tree collection week. And again, everything that we do collect, Sarah and I collect curbside, makes it to our compost facility, and everything decays over the course of maybe about 12 months. And then we can turn it back into a reusable compost product for our residents. And for us, leaf waste must be placed in clear, transparent bags during the scheduled leaf collection weeks. Again, a 3rd truck comes around, so make sure you keep everything separate. I do encourage people highly, highly not to use black bags to contain their leaves. It does need to be clear bags. And then our residents may drop off their leaves or their branches at the Mill Fair Compost Center for free.
Wonderful. Thank you both for such an informative presentation. And we've always known that there's differences, and now we kind of know what they are. So thank you so much. We're going to have to move on so that we have time for everybody. And the answer to our last question is 7. The question was, how many different numbers of plastic are recyclable, even though they can't all be recycled in our area? And Kathy Mazza got that, and that was 7. So here's our next question. What 2 items are recyclable 100% over and over and over again? 100% recyclable over and over, 2 items. So that's your question. Our next presenter is Terry Fisher, and she is the public sector representative from Waste Management. Part of her role is to educate people about recycling and what Waste Management's role is in that scenario. So Terry, you're up.
Hey, thank you, Betsy. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. We have seen many changes in the recycling industry over the past several years. In response to these changes, recyclers have been working with municipalities to capture good quality recyclables at the curb. This starts by updating material accepted in recycling programs reflect recycling market demands. My presentation today gives an overview of our recycling processes and identifies the key materials we want as a recycling facility. If you want to recycle good quality material, whoops, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened with my screen. Okay, sorry about that. If you want to recycle good quality material, the items I review today will be your guide. Have you ever asked yourself, why do we recycle? It is important to focus on the real reason we recycle, and that is to offset the use of urgent resources. Our goal should not only be to recycle, but to make sure we are recycling correctly. How do we get to where we are today? A decade ago, we started to roll out our single-stream recycling programs. These were incredibly popular and increased participation dramatically. At the time, we needed to drive volume to our facilities for them to work. And unfortunately, when these programs were rolled out, we created a narrative of throwing all your recyclables into the bin, and we'll figure it out once they arrive at our facility. Now, with an increased focus on quality, particularly for viable end markets, we must talk about recycling right and putting the correct materials in the recycling bin. Why are we so focused on contamination and recycling right? This slide captures the events leading up to all the changes in the recycling industry. The 0.5% contamination limit that went into effect in 2018 made everyone look at, what am I recycling and how can I recycle the proper way? For some time, we have seen an increased demand in quality from our end markets. Until 2017, China accepted close to 30% of our recycled material. In 2013, they announced Operation Green Fence, which really began their focus on quality checks. And in July 2017, they announced National Sword, which would ban 24 materials they were previously accepting, including mixed plastics and mixed paper. In addition, they announced all materials had to contain less than 0.5% contamination. At this time, contamination was much greater than 0.5%. These new regulations went into effect in 2018. Other countries accepting material followed and also implemented strict guidelines concerning contamination limits. With the changes in the industry, domestic markets have been adjusting. 80% of our paper is sold to North American markets compared to 60% in 2016. None of our residential plastics is being exported. As we have focused on the importance of recycling education, we have seen contamination rates come down at our facilities. Our goal is to have less than 10% contamination by 2025. This slide shows the trend for contamination and shows there still is a lot of work that needs to be done to reach our goal of 10% or less contamination in 2025. Here's a little bit of background. What does it take to actually recycle something? One, can the material be easily collected? Convenient collection. A major barrier to recycling is making it difficult for people to do. Cart-based, curbside, mixed recycling collection makes recycling convenient and consistently results in the collection of more recyclable materials. At the same time, mixed recycling invites more non-recyclables and food and liquids that consume the whole load. Materials collected are often wet and dirty, contain broken glass. Materials are also flattened during compaction and may be sorted incorrectly. Two, can the material be processed, identified, and separated? Processing and sorting single-stream recyclables requires both technology and labor. There are physical limitations to what can be recycled. Equipment and staff may not be able to identify or separate certain materials. Film plastic creates the single biggest processing problem. It gets tangled in the MRF equipment, breaking or stopping machinery. Food and moisture also challenge the process. And third, we have to find out, is there a viable end market demanding the materials for remanufacturing? Robust end markets are critical for sustainable recycling. Having enough of the material, plus the actual buyers for the material, equals an end market. We need to keep in mind that even though an item is recyclable, it needs to be recycled at the proper facility. For example, there is a robust market for clean and dry film plastic collected in take-back programs, none for film collected at the curbside. Just because material is collected does not mean it actually is recycled. Recycling doesn't happen until the material becomes a feedstock for new product. While a lot of material can be technically recycled through special collections, we only accept certain materials through our curbside collection program. Here are a few pictures I wanted to share. When we started our focus on contamination a year or so ago, these are some of the loads we were getting off of our routes. Here's a few more pictures. And I wanted to ask you really, do you think this material is coming off of our trash route or our recycling route? This is what we have to take to market, and this is what we were receiving on our recycling routes. So as you can see, we have a lot of work to do at our recycling facilities from what we're getting in to what we have to take to market. Why is recycling rate so important? One wrong item in the bin can ruin the whole load. We see a lot of wishful recycling where someone will think something might be recyclable or hope that it is. So they throw it in their container and assume we will figure it out once it arrives at our facility. Unfortunately, that material will end up as residual, and in the process of removing that contamination, we can lose other valuable recyclables. Most importantly, just because contamination arrives at a recycling facility, it does not mean we can find an outlet for that material. Contamination ends up back at the landfill anyway, creating additional costs and transportation. So what can you do? We can all focus on what we can control and make sure we put the proper items in our recycling bins. The items we currently accept at Waste Management are plastic bottles, jars, and jugs, number 1 and 2, empty and cleaned out aluminum and tin cans, paper larger than a standard sheet of paper, and your cardboard. One example of Waste Management's commitment to closing the recycling loop is our carts, which are manufactured with recycled residential curbside plastics collected straight out of the recycling program across the country without compromising durability or warranty standards. Here is an overview from when your material is collected at curbside, delivered to our recycling facility, to being processed and finally billed to take to market. Waste Management is committed to single stream recycling, but we need to make sure we are collecting good, quality materials at the curb. We are working with customers to recycle right, keeping contamination out of the recycling bin. Additional resources can be found at wm.com/recycleright. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Betsy.
Thank you, Terry. That was wonderful. And it's so good to see what we can and we cannot do. We have a winner, and we found out that 2 items that are 100% recyclable over and over again are aluminum and glass. And Karen Zemansky was our winner for that one. So here's our next question. We hear this all the time. Are lids on containers allowed to be recyclable in Erie County? So can you recycle the lids? That's a yes or a no. So stay tuned after our next presenter. And our next presenter is Sarah Peelman, who's going to talk about some more trends in recycling and the economics about it as well. Sarah, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen here. Where is it? Okie dokie. I don't think this is right. Am I sharing my screen?
You are. We're seeing everything down the side as well.
Yeah. How do I, oh, here's slideshow. Sorry about that.
Here you go. You're good to go.
All right. Recycling. What has changed and why? Recycling used to be so easy. There was no more separating all the different items, the cans, the aluminum cans, the glass, the plastic, the paper, the cardboard. Single stream, so easy to love. Everything just goes in one bin and we're done. I don't know if any of you remember the city of Erie. Back in the day, we had recycling every other week. So one week we would have cans and bottles, plastics, and the other week was all paper and cardboard. It was very confusing. And so it's so much easier now that it's everything every week. So when we recycle, we feel good about ourselves. Yay! I did it. And we feel good about our efforts to save the planet. Yay, I'm making a difference. So what's the problem? That was the great convenience, but there's also the contamination. What is contamination? Some of the other presenters talked about this a little bit already. Obviously, garbage that is not recyclable is contamination. Other types of plastic items that are not recyclable are considered contamination. Any item that contains glass shards in it, except for the glass itself, would be considered contaminating. Paper products that have gotten wet would be considered contaminated. And items that are soiled or still have food in them would be considered contaminated. So on average, about 25% of the stuff that we recycle is really too contaminated to go anywhere except landfill, when only about a decade ago, it was only 7%. And the studies keep showing that when we have single stream recycling, people often choose to put more stuff out when they can put it all in one bin, because everybody wants to recycle as much as possible. But again, that's what several of us have been referring to as wishful recycling. Just because we want to recycle it doesn't mean it's actually able to be recycled. This is a problem. It also happens because the trucks are constantly compacting and smashing the materials together. Sorting machines can't tell the difference between smashed cans and bottles and paper sometimes. They all look flat and squished. And when the glass breaks, shards get into the plastic and paper, which make it no longer able to be recycled. And the machines, because the machines cannot separate out all those glass shards. So single stream recycling is easier to do because everything goes in one bin or one bag, and we can recycle more items, and it's cheaper because we only need one truck to pick it all up. But less of those items are actually able to be recycled, and at the end of the line, a lot more of those items end up being sent to the landfill because of the contamination issues. So for a long time, nobody really noticed, because much of these contaminated recyclables were sent far away. Since much of our consumer goods are made in China, it made sense that the world's recycling market is also in China. So that meant most of the recyclable materials were shipped over to China. And it was much more cost effective to ship them there than to invest in sorting them here and upgrading plants here to separate all those materials, when China was the one who using the end material, so they were willing to accept it all. Unfortunately, all that huge levels of material, especially containing a lot of contaminated material, began to degrade the Chinese environment. And because they had more lax regulations over there, that also led to higher air pollution and growing mounds of trash. These are a couple of images where you can see just piles of trash, well, recyclables, and people wading through trash that's supposed to have a lot of recyclables in it. Again, like the pictures that Terry showed, sometimes the recyclables and trash are so mixed together you can barely tell the difference. But still, for a long time, because China was still accepting it, again, no one really noticed until China's green fence policy. It was Operation Green Fence was initiated in 2013 by the Chinese government with the goal to reduce the amount of contaminated recyclables coming into China. They especially focused on plastic containers numbers 3 through 7. These containers, the most significant difference is because they're often made by injection molding rather than blow molding. And so they're the ones that don't have the necks or what we would call the screw top lids. All different plastics are difficult to recycle in general because all different plastics have different melting points. They have different additives and several different characteristics that either make them brittle or flexible. And like I said, they just have different additives and chemicals in them. And so it's hard to there's lots of recyclables that don't even have the numbers 1 through 7 on them, which means they're currently not able to be recycled at all anywhere. The result is that China stopped accepting as much material, and our American recycling plants can't handle all the plastic that used to go to China. And so now we're being forced to throw a lot of it in the landfills. Much of the numbers 3 through 7, we can't recycle anymore. And so they do, unfortunately, are currently going to the landfills. And many of the plants can't accept glass at all, because once it's broken again, it contaminates the plastic, it contaminates the paper, it just gets in everything and we can't separate it out. And so we really need to improve the quality of our recyclable materials. Again, some items that are considered recyclable are currently not able to be recycled at the curbside. So that would include items like cartons, the lids, styrofoam, and glass, and lots of other items. There's a lot of items that could be recycled, but because there isn't a market or a demand for them, they're just not able to, there's no one to sell them to, so they're not able to be recycled. So hopefully the future of the MRFs, through material recovery facilities, will begin to upgrade their plants and hopefully be able to sort more material. But the challenge with that is it does cost a lot of money to upgrade plants. Labor costs a lot more here than in China and some other countries. And we have a lot more stringent environmental and safety standards, which is good for everybody in the end, but it does cost a lot more money to do those things properly. So in the future, recycling might start to look a little different. If we still want to recycle as many materials as possible, we might have to start source separating the material. So instead of putting it all in one bin, we might have to take it to different drop-off facilities or have separate bins, even in public areas. And what if we may even having to have more separated recycling at the curb? This is a picture in Germany, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different toters there. That's crazy. But they're really trying to get as much material as possible and still keep it clean to be able to sell it, to be reused to make other materials. So it may take a little bit more work. We definitely have to keep looking for solutions into the future, but the results are worth it. Hopefully we'll have cleaner materials and a cleaner planet for everybody, and then we'll all win. Yay!
Thank you, Sarah. You know, we think about recycling, but we really never think about the economics behind it. And I find it really fascinating. The whole idea that somebody's got to want to buy our stuff for us to recycle it is just amazing. You answered the question, lids are not recyclable, and our winner was Tammy Van Buren. So our next question is, you know, we hear a lot about recycling and reusing. So are they the same? So what's the difference between recycling something and reusing it? Difference between recycling and reusing. Our last presenter for the evening, Lynn is going to come back and she's going to wrap things up for us. Again, Lynn is the sustainability coordinator for Erie County, and she's going to address how recycling has changed in the face of COVID and share tips and tricks for us for a little bit easier recycling. So Lynn, you're on.
Great, thank you. Okay, so how COVID-19 has impacted recycling. Initially, when it first started, there may have been some temporary service disturbances. Some recycling special collection events were canceled. And also there was an increase of demand for household hazardous waste and electronic waste events as people were home more and cleaning out their houses. There have also been concerns for trash and recycling workers about exposure to COVID-19. So some MRFs and haulers experienced difficulty finding workers, and some MRFs have bin or will hold materials for 48 to 72 hours before sorting them, especially if those materials have been exposed to people with COVID-19. So some hard to recycle items that you can deal with by bringing to a collection event are electronic waste and household hazardous waste. So things like oil-based paint, corrosives, used oil, flammable liquids, antifreeze, batteries, those kinds of things. Can be brought to the county's household hazardous waste and e-waste collections. They are on the second Saturday of every month, and they're usually located at 1624 Fillmore Avenue in Erie, PA. It's 40 cents a pound for electronics and 50 cents a pound for hazardous materials. You can also bring tires for $5 a tire. We do ask that everyone registers online or calls to register ahead of time. They'll give you a slot. You can choose a slot between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And we do ask that when you arrive, it's like a drive-through garage, and someone will meet you at your window to they'll weigh the items, and you'll do the payment. So we ask that you wear a mask when interacting with the staff, and you just stay in your car and they take everything out and weigh it for you, and then do the transaction. Some other drop-off locations. So if you don't have access to curbside recycling, you do have options for a couple drop-off locations. Waste Management has a single stream drop-off location at 1154 West 16th Street in Erie. And that is Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They take plastic bottles, jugs, and jars, numbers 1 and 2, metal cans, and cardboard and paperboard boxes, as well as office paper. There is also a single stream drop off at the landfill on Mondays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's actually across the street at 851 Robinson Road. Again, materials must be removed from plastic bags, and they take bottles, jugs, and jars, number 1 and 2, and metal cans only. Pro Waste has a drop-off at 613 East 18th. Again, removing the items from plastic bags, and they have separate bins for cardboard and paperboard boxes, a separate bin for plastic bottles, jugs, and jars, numbers 1 and 2, and metal cans. The last one is Franklin Township Fire Department at 10411 Route 98 in Edinburgh. They have a separate place where they collect aluminum cans, and those can be left in plastic bags. There's like in front of a fenced area there, and they use the proceeds for those aluminum cans to go to the fire department. Otherwise, they have a single stream collection bin where you can put plastic bottles, jugs, and jars, numbers 1 and 2, metal cans, and cardboard, paperboard boxes. So some takeaway thoughts. We can rethink how we purchase things. I know when I go to a store and I'm buying something, I always try to look for packaging that can be recycled, whether buying something in a cardboard box instead of a plastic container that might not be recyclable. Trying to purchase things that are in a recyclable container. You can also buy things in bulk and bring your own containers. I know that that's gotten a little more difficult with COVID-19. Also, you can refuse disposable plastic. So bringing your own straw, bringing your own utensils can also be a good way to reduce your waste. And then when in doubt, throw it out. If you follow the 9 to know, or what your municipality collects, then just follow those things. If you're doubtful, it's better to throw it out and stick to the basics. So just paying attention to any information your municipality shares with you on recycling. And that's all I have. And I think we may be moving to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We've had some questions in the chat box, but before I go to that, we did have a winner in our last question. The winner is Stucky, so congratulations to all our winners. The answer to that question was that recycling breaks down the item to create a new item, like plastic bottle becomes a new plastic bottle. And reusing is using parts or whole item for another use, like arts and crafts or something like that. So I'm going to read some of the questions that came up in the chat room during the night. Some of them, I believe, have been answered already. One I don't think I heard an answer to was, can I wash and recycle aluminum pie pans? So anyone on our presenters can address that one.
I will take that and I will say no. It needs to be an aluminum can. Pie pans is not a container, so it cannot be recycled.
Okay, thank you. Someone asked, and this would be a MILLCREEK question, what's the latest on whether we can recycle number 4 pre-washed salad or whole chicken containers?
If I'm picturing the container you're talking about, I would say probably not, because it sounds like more of a clamshell container and not like a jug or a jar or something like that. So I would say probably not. And we just don't seem to really, the numbers don't seem to help us right now. So jugs, jars, bottles, and containers, but still not clamshell containers. So like I said, I think of containers as maybe a yogurt container, but clamshells are still not permitted in MILLCREEK Township.
That's what I was going to ask. When you say food containers, you mean like yogurt, cottage cheese, the ones with the on lids?
Yeah. And again, when in doubt, throw it out.
Okay, thank you. Somebody's asking, can you recycle junk mail and envelopes?
We are still accepting those in the City of Erie's program. I know Waste Management prefers whole sheets of paper, like office paper size, but we still are accepting them as long as they don't have plastic on them or any of the plastic envelopes, and they're larger than
Window envelope, correct?
I'm sorry, what was that?
It can't be a window envelope, correct? Because
Correct.
they have plastic on them.
And I don't want to confuse folks, but when I'm presenting to our customers, we do not want envelopes at all. And we just focus on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper or larger.
Okay. What about small bottles with lids like vitamins or medication bottles?
No for MILLCREEK too.
Okay.
If the plastic, if you don't mind, if the plastic containers have to be, their diameter has to be larger than 2 inches. But if it's a medical prescription bottle, that's med waste, and that cannot be put in your recycling container.
Oh, okay. All right. Someone asked if their community didn't recycle, what can be done? And I know in the last presentation, it showed some drop-off locations. Would that be what the people use if their community doesn't have recycling?
Yes, they would need to find a drop-off location near them for the items that they want to recycle. So like we listed one for glass, and then they listed some Waste Management, Pro Waste, and I think it was the fire department on the township.
Then there's a question about, is there a place to drop off compostable items like compostable glass or plates?
Glass would not be considered compostable. That would be considered recyclable, but you'd have to take that to, right now, the closest place is the Bayfront Glass Recycling. And compostable plates, the city's municipal compost facility cannot accept items like that. We can only accept yard waste, grass and leaves and small branches, but you could start your own backyard compost pile to put things like that in it, along with vegetable scraps and things like that.
And then is there anywhere to recycle hard styrofoam, like the kinds that come around, like anything you buy, TVs or coffee pots or any of that?
Yes, Erie Foam Fabricators accepts material, styrofoam packaging and styrofoam boards, but I believe they do not accept peanuts. And also Pony Express, I think, recycles them, but it's always best to call them first, to look up their number and double check before you drive the whole way to the location in case they don't accept it anymore, because recycling rules and regulations do change all the time, just like Jessica and everybody else kept emphasizing. So it's always best to call first, but there are Erie Foam Fabricators and Pony Express do take those materials as far as I know.
And yeah, I think it's great to call ahead because foam fabricators will take styrofoam, but it depends on if they're full or if they need material. So calling ahead is always a great suggestion.
Yeah, and another great place to call for items, if it's like household items or appliances or even like paint, if you have a lot of material, is the Habitat for Humanity's Restore location, because they do accept a lot of items that we wouldn't normally think are recyclable, but they can reuse them.
Okay. Someone asked, do you know what country has the highest recycling rate and what do their programs look like?
I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but I would assume it would be like Germany or one of the European countries, because they really have it, an advanced recycling program. That one image I had showed like 7 different bins, and I know their drop-off facilities have large amounts of different types of containers, and they're still sorting material in places like that. So it'd definitely be the more European countries.
You're right, Sarah. It is Germany, followed by Austria and then South Korea. And they all have about over 50% recycling rate.
Wow, great.
It is good. How about black plastic? Can that be recycled?
No.
I would say no.
Okay. And someone says, when we return plastic bags to a grocery store, are they really be recycling them?
Yeah, Jessica can handle this question.
Yeah, I just looked this one up today. They are being recycled. Sometimes they're turned into like composite decking and things like that. What I found interesting was that I think there's one called plasticbagrecycling.org and then Trex Recycling. But what they both showed me was that it's not only the plastic grocery bag that you can recycle. And again, the items I'm about to mention shouldn't be recycled curbside in any program. You should find a drop-off facility. But we found items, again, all clean, all dry, but we found, again, the plastic grocery bags. We also found the bread bags, the puff pillows that you get with shipping, and the wrap that comes around water bottles. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the newspaper sleeves or the wrapper around bulk toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
And even cereal bags, didn't it say, as long as they
Yes.
tear them and they're really plastic?
Yes. So I know that was an interesting find for us today, and we're going to publish it in MILLCREEK magazine coming up. But that was a great question. It is really recycled. And what's neat about what Sarah and Lynn and I do is we actually get recycling tonnages back every single year annually from grocery stores and businesses around town. And so I can see, what Walmart, Wegmans, Giant Eagle, I don't have Target in my area, but we actually are, receive the reports on what's recycled, and the plastic bags are always listed, and they have to have an end user. They have to have actually somebody buying them. So those are definitely recycled, and they make really neat products out of them. Like I said, plastic picnic tables, decking, things like that.
That's great. Great to know. Well, I think I captured the questions that we haven't answered by your presentations. I just want to remind everyone that this is being recorded and it will be available on the Sisters of St. Joseph website, which is www.ssjerie.org. Give it a day or two, it will be there. Recycling is not dead. I think we all learned that tonight. It's always evolving, and that's what makes it a little confusing at times, but we ask that you hang in there. At one point tonight, we had 40 people on the call, so that was great, and we appreciate that, everyone that was participating. Don't participate in wishful recycling. We all wish that more things were recycled, but we can't. Stay informed by contacting your local municipality with any questions you have. We can't do it all, but we can do something. So thank you to all of our presenters tonight. I know a lot of work went into this preparation for tonight, and we really appreciate you sharing all your expertise with us. And to all the people that participated, we appreciate you being here, and we hope you found it very helpful. Thank you and have a great evening.